here's one thing that I think is worth covering, because it came up in conversation recently with a person in real life, not just on the internet, because you get all sorts of wackos on the internet. But basically where a person I work with was talking about atheists as if we're all militant atheists. Now, she isn't religious, and she's part Japanese, so that's about her closest connection to Japanese, being quarter Japanese, and her grandfather going to, I think it's like Shinto sort of temple, or at least he used to many years before he passed, he's now deceased. Now, I think a lot of people just have the idea that people who are atheists are just obsessed with atheism, or, you know, hardline skepticism, the impossibility of God, basically. She says this because her grandfather used to be in a university. I believe he was a professor. Now, I haven't done a background check to confirm that, but I'm going to assume that is the case. And apparently a lot of the other people in higher education were basically the same, where they were like, you know, dismissing the idea of God. But if you're going to open up that can of worms, yeah, it's going to happen. If you're going to believe in stuff because, hey, you want to believe in it, you can. I think many people are going to say, well, they don't believe in it and here's reasons why. They find no reason for it, and here's all the stuff that is claimed by religion which is worth dismissing because it doesn't work. You can understand it. Even if you don't necessarily want to agree with it, you can understand why people are sceptical. Now, if you want to change subject, you can change subject with other human beings, unless they have a particularly antisocial personality, in which case trying to change conversation points would be very difficult. They always drag you back to the same old points over and over. But largely there should be no issue. Largely there should not be a problem with simply saying, actually, I don't want to talk about this. Could we change the discussion? You know, because you're not going to change my mind, I'm not going to change yours, and I would rather talk about something else. And to be entirely honest, I'd rather talk about something which is actually my area of expertise. Let's talk about biology, and not in regard to young Earth creationism. Let's talk about interesting aspects of biological evolution, or perhaps of some kind of ancient philosophy. Let's talk about this, let's talk about that. Let's not discuss, debate an issue like ancient superstition or religion or the validity of certain supernatural claims. So I can understand why people who are believers but aren't hardcore fanatical believers would feel offended, would feel annoyed, but you can understand it when it comes up. But learning to sway people in different directions, learning to not convert them, not in terms of debate, but trying to go towards different discussion points is probably quite important. Otherwise you're going to be dealing with those issues over and over and over. A person wants to talk about an issue which you don't feel comfortable with, and that could be anything, to be honest. In this day and age, of course, it could be anything. It could be anything from the rapey nature of Harvey Weinstein to the Holocaust. A lot of people don't want to talk about the Holocaust. It's a very dark part of human history. That includes various other genocides, from Rwanda to the Armenian genocide carried out by the Ottoman Turks, or by the Turks, I suppose, when they were establishing themselves, and, you know, various genocides throughout history actually in Armenia, but that's another thing. But yeah, the list goes on of things people might not want to talk about. They might not want to talk about, oh, you've been to the doctor and it turns out you've got colitis. My parents' dog is colitis, and I know someone who's had colitis, but yes, you might not want to talk about someone's lower intestinal tract and their issues with, you know, ulcers there. That might not be something you want to talk about at lunch while you're at work and you're trying to eat your bologna sandwich. You know, you might not want to talk about certain things. So changing conversation is pretty important. And in the grand scale of conversation, I think changing away from a discussion about religion or God isn't that difficult. If you want to say, could we talk about something else? Because I'm not really keen on talking about this. Maybe that should be a more normal thing. You know, you don't want to talk about 9/11 conspiracy theories because you know someone's talking shit. You know they're going to change their mind, and you try and sway the conversation by saying, well, okay, let's talk about something. You know, let's talk about something else. You're not going to say literally "I'm uncomfortable" because someone might, you know, be funny about that. But imagine, if you will, if you simply said, you know, well, what's your view on this? You know, or something more subtle. You go, you should simply change conversation. Oh, well, the other day I started talking to someone blah 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 about something else, and you move on from 9/11 conspiracy theories and the ridiculous things there, or some kind of other nonsense, and you move on to something you're perhaps more comfortable with because it's not going to cause major disagreements. You know, it's not going to cause major disagreements. That's often what people do. They try and shift conversation points because they don't want to deal with someone's probably quite tedious and repetitive conversational points. And that could be a person who's talking a lot about God, or the non-existence of God, or I don't know, anything really. List off anything I've spoken about. It's going to bore someone to death, isn't it? It's going to bore probably several people to death. But in any case, yeah, you simply change your conversation points. You know, if it's something you don't want to discuss, just trying to shoehorn in something else. Oh yeah, you know, I saw a documentary recently, and it's to do with black holes. I know you mentioned in space and aliens, but you know, that's pretty interesting. And you've seen some of the things with the, you know, the new telescope they've got with the James Webb, you know, and just sort of like spitballing things like that, which moves a person on, or could move a person on if they're so inclined. I mean, if they're not inclined to change their conversation, you give them a few minutes and then you decide you're going to do something else. Or you start, you go, hang on, I've just got to check something. You know, pretend you've got your phone's gone off and it's a vibration, you know. Oh, okay, 1 sec. And do that for like 30 seconds a minute. And then they might lose their conversation point if they're a real bore. I mean, I've had that with people, that kind of thing where people have become a real bore when they're talking about reptilian aliens or archangels or whatever the case may be. It's not my area of interest. I've been polite. I've given you some time. And now I want to change conversation point because you're becoming preachy. Well, I think that's the broadest point you can have there. Preachy people are boring. Obsessive people are boring. Except with people who have the same obsessions. And that's the point.